This is Attorney Collingwood. I am posting another video really quickly about things to look for DUIs. I know that oftentimes people think they're dead in the water when they're pulled over. I can't say this is legal advice, but this is definitely legal guidance and things to look for. First and foremost, the first question is, why did you get pulled over? Did they have a legitimate reason? Were you going in and out of lanes, or were you speeding, and various those reasons? If you were doing those possible traffic violations, yeah, they have a right to pull you over. The next question, the next stage is going to be, did they have a right to question you and ask you to leave the vehicle and possibly do sobriety tests? Typically, it comes down to, oh, I smell bloodshot. I see bloodshot eyes. I smell alcohol. Those are always put into a police report because they want to justify their right to ask you to do a sobriety test, field sobriety test, because realistically, they're going to always put it in there to justify it. It's hard to overcome that burden. It's just what the officer said versus what you said, because that can be detected, cannot be detected on video. However, most police squad cars have dash cams, and so these various other parts of it, you can look at your sobriety test, like your field sobriety test, which is typically the horizontal nystagmus test, which deals with your eyes. That's going to be hard to impeach and call into question. However, the walk and turn, the one-legged stand, and those are the main ones that you can impeach, and those are usually on the video camera saying, hey, it doesn't look like I was, swaying or stumbling or anything like that. In some situation, it's almost better to not do them, because if you're that intoxicated, I'm not saying to necessarily always reject it, but just imagine this: it's just adding to the evidence that they need to convict you. Then typically, if they make you do those field sobriety tests, they will ask you to do a breath test. These breath tests are not admissible in court typically, because they are not calibrated. These handheld breathalyzers are, let's say, not very accurate, not to the extent where they're admissible in court. The reason why they do the sobriety test is so they can get to the breath test. Let's be honest. Most of these officers are just waiting for the breath test. The field sobriety test, it's not 100% accurate, but it gives them the probable cause to, ask you further, to investigate further, and they're going to put this all in their police report. So, you have a right to do the breath test with the breathalyzer. A lot of states, they do automatic suspension if you don't do them. I know that in Illinois, you can refuse them, and it'll be a year. In Michigan, it'll be also a year. Those are the two states I'm licensed in, but it's going to be state specific. So after that, let's say they do a breath test, and the breath test goes 0.08 and up. 0.08 and up allows them to move to the next level, which is detain you, put in your handcuffs, and take you down to the station. At the station, they could do the official chemical breath test, and that's admissible in court. And you have a right to reject that as well. So those are basic concepts and things that you're looking for dealing with the breath test portion. After which time, you really are questioning, let's say, the accuracy of the breath test. And typically, the way you can do that is by subpoenaing the calibration of these breath tests. I know the handheld breathalyzer is not calibrated on a regular basis, almost never. So that's going to get it out. They're not going to be able to admit that evidence. However, the one at the station, they typically will calibrate on a regular basis, an hourly basis, because they use it every day, and they know that's the fundamental evidence that they need. So even if you blow over the subpoenaing, you have to subpoena the calibration. If the calibrations aren't accurate, which it's typically rare, but it happens, you'd be surprised. A lot of officers cut corners. Their goal is to get you off the road. The job of the prosecutor is to get you charged and convicted of the DUI or the OWI offense. So the officer's job is like, hey, I did my job. I got off the road. I think he's drunk. He's under the influence. Therefore, you can handle it. The prosecutor is gonna try to fight, not try to fight, but try to convict you, and that's on them. That's not on me. The officers typically have that stance. That's not my job type thing. So those are the process, and the things that you're looking for, to reiterate, is if they have probable cause to pull you over, were you swerving, were you speeding, and they're going to look at the dash cam to see if, hey, was I stumbling, was I slurring, as the officer may often claim in their police report. Even if you're not, they still put it in there typically. So you can use that to impeach their credibility, because they're just trying to put in all the stuff, and oftentimes you can see whether or not this person is stumbling or slurring and did a good job in regards to the field sobriety test. And the instructions for field sobriety tests is another thing. Officers sometimes aren't clear, so they will be very nitpicky on everything. And sometimes if they don't give you the right instructions, how am I supposed to do it correctly, exactly as to your liking? So, but typically they just ask you to do it so they can get to the breath test, and then after that, to get you down to the station and do a chemical test down there. So those things are what you're looking for. Typically, once the chemical test is taken and you say you're over, it's harder to beat. It's very hard to beat. I'll be strictly honest. However, really one of the main ways you can beat it is the calibration. Make sure it's calibrated. And other than that, it's tough because they have a scientifically proven process. I know with the advent of legalized marijuana, I think it's going to be another issue, and that's one thing that the police department is trying to get in front of. But I know it's very tough for them. It's kind of part of the reason why many states haven't legalized marijuana. But that's also another thing. That's still considered driving while under the influence, because you're under influence of narcotics, alcohol, other drugs, methamphetamines. Those are all considered, driving while under the influence. They don't care what type. They just don't think you're fit for the road. So that's what they're looking for. So those are basic things that you should identify from your case. Oftentimes, they're not going to be there, but there are some situations you'd be surprised. I would say probably, from my experience, about 1 out of 4 cases the officer messes up. That's higher than you'd think, right? But that it does happen. So talk to a legal, attorney in your local area, see if these fact patterns fit, and if not, these attorneys are going to be able to identify that those defense aren't there, and subsequently try to mitigate the damage, which is oftentimes what I tell my clients. I'm trying to mitigate now because we haven't seen it. I don't see it factual defenses in your case, but mitigation oftentimes is not the end of the world either. So pay fines, do things that are required by the court. So that's life. You pay for your your actions oftentimes. But these are things that you're looking for prior to that. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment, like this video if you think it's informative, and I will be back with further content in the future. Thank you very much. Bye.